let's start the presentation session. Okay, the first one is Fatima. Okay, could you please share the slides with us? And now it's your turn, Fatima.
Can you see the slides?
Yes, very clear.
Okay.
Yes,
Perfect.
you can see it, Fatma.
All right, thank you. So good morning. I mean, in Dubai here it's morning, but hello everyone. My name is Fatma Attar. I am a second year student in my master degree studying math. And the topic I picked up for today is titled An Exploratory Study on Cross-Cultural Differences in Facial Emotion Recognition Between Adults from Malaysia and Australia. So let's do a brief introduction on the topic first. Emotions have captured the interest of researchers because of its importance. The importance of it lies in the two primary functions it has: one, social purposes, and two, coping with life tasks and experiences. The social purposes it serves is letting people know about our feelings and building, sustaining, and ending relationships by acting upon others' interactions with us. One method that is used to express and communicate emotions across all cultures is facial expressions. And the ability people possess of identifying, understanding, and understanding these facial expressions is referred to as facial emotion recognition, or FER for short. Now that we understand the basic background of this paper, we need to learn about major depressive disorder, or MDD for short. People with MDD have deficits in regulation and processing of emotions. Researchers have found that people with MDD have impaired facial emotion recognition compared to healthy people who don't have MDD. Another study showed that MDD patients react slower to facial expressions, so they have a slower reaction time than healthy or people without MDD. Now, how does culture influence emotions? People from different cultural backgrounds have different interpretations, therefore affecting their feelings and how these feelings are processed. A study has found that basic emotions are recognized across different cultures. That being said, other studies have shown that people of certain cultures are able to recognize specific emotions better than people of other cultures. For example, researchers have found that Caucasians are better at recognizing emotions than Asians. In another experiment comparing Asians and Westerners, FER, Asians experience difficulties recognizing fear more than Westerners. From these findings, uh, from these findings, we can deduce that cultural factors such as perception of emotion, understanding and familiarity of another culture, and sociocultural norms regarding appropriate and proper display of emotions influence emotion recognition. So the goal of this study is to better understand MDD through a cross-cultural investigation. This study will investigate the cultural differences between Malaysian Malay and Australian Caucasians with MDD and without MDD in FER. The researchers hypothesize a significant difference in the accuracy and average time response of FER between the two groups that we have, Malaysians and Australians, with Australian Caucasian performing better. In addition, it is hypothesized that participants without MDD will perform better on FER, and that participants with MDD will be able to recognize faces, to recognize disgust better than the other participants. And lastly, Malaysian participants would be better at recognizing faces expressing happiness, whereas Australian participants would recognize faces expressing fear better than positive emotions. So, what are the methods used in this experiment? But first, we need to talk about the participants of this study. There were 88 participants in this study from the ages of 18 until 60 years old. 47 of these participants were Malaysian Malays, 25 of which did not have MDD. And then the other 41 participants were Australian Caucasians, 22 of which were without MDD. All the participants were citizens of their respective countries and were literate in their respective languages. So Malaysians were citizens of Malaysia and spoke they were literate in Malay, and Australians, they were citizens of Australia and they spoke English. Participants who had a history of substance dependency, history of psychosis, organic brain injury, permanent physical injury affecting their response to tasks, and non-corrected vision were excluded from the experiment. In addition to this, those unable to understand spoken or written Malay or English and had mixed parentage, so parents from different countries, were also excluded. So the measures taken in this experiment were two, sorry. The first one is the Beck Depression Inventory, BDI for short, and the Beck Depression Inventory Malay, BDI Malay. The BDI assesses the severity of depression in people. Each part of the assessment has a rating system of 4 points from zero meaning no symptoms to 3 meaning severe symptoms. And after the assessment, the scores are summed up to get a result. And the BDA Malay is similar. Here in the slide, I have given an example of how the BDI looks like, the BDI test looks like. It is worth mentioning that in addition to the BDI assessment, the participants were evaluated for MDD by experts, by therapists. And the second measure is the stimuli used in the experiment, which are pictures. The pictures were acquired from the Montreal set of facial displays of emotions. During the experiment, participants were presented with pictures of Caucasian and Asian faces randomly. And the subjects in the picture displayed the following emotional expressions. We have neutral, happy, sad, angry, fear, disgust, and shame. The participants were then asked to identify the emotions in the picture as quickly as they could. So what kind of results did the researchers get from this experiment? Before we get into actual results, we need to have a general demographic data or a general idea about the participants in the experiment. The data consisted of 23% male Malaysian participants and 78.7% female Malaysian participants, all between the ages of 19 and 53 years old. On the other hand, the Australian participants consisted of 29.3% males and 68.3% females who were between the ages of 18 and 57 years old. When it comes to data related to MDD, the mean BDI or the average BDI scores for Malaysians without MDD was 2.72, and the mean of those with MDD was 32.64. And on the other hand, the mean of BDI scores of Australians without MDD was 4.68, and the mean of those with MDD was 27.37. The data showed that Malaysian participants with MDD experienced more depressive symptoms than those without MDD, as expected. Similarly for the Australian participants. That being said, comparing the Malaysian and Australian participants with MDD, The data shows that Malaysian participants with MDD have significantly higher BDI scores than Australian participants with MDD. In addition, the data shows that gender does not play a role in this experiment. There's no difference between male and women in this experiment. Lastly, analysis of the data shows that there is an interaction between depression status and cultural group. So how did they perform on the FER? The analysis displayed that there is no evidence that Australian participants performed better than their peers or that those with MDD had better performance than those without MDD. This is shown in this table, but it's too complicated to read, so I'll just summarize it for you. The table shows the interactions and the main effects I mentioned earlier. The analysis done showed that there was a main effect of cultural group. This main effect was only significant for the emotion of fear, contradictory to the initial hypothesis. The researchers found that Malaysian participants had greater accuracy recognizing expressions of fear than Australian participants, which is again contradicting the hypothesis that we had, or they had in the beginning. Now, what about response time? When it comes to response time on the FER, the analysis revealed that Malaysian participants without MDD responded to stimuli in a shorter time than Australian participants without MDD. Furthermore, researchers did not find any significant difference between Malaysian participants with MDD and Australian participants with MDD. In addition to that, there was no significant difference between Malaysian participants with and without MDD. Australian participants with MDD, on the other hand, had a shorter response time than those without MDD. Lastly, investigating the 7 emotions in this study further, the influence of culture becomes clearer. As I mentioned, Malaysian participants were able to recognize fear better than Australian participants. This contradicts a few studies done by other researchers, but is believed that this is because of Malaysia being a multiracial population. In addition, another reason is the methodology used in the experiment. Therefore, the authors encourage more studies that include cultural influences. Some other studies show that people with a more severe MDD case have more impairment of emotion recognition. In this case, in the case of this study, the participants ranged from mild to moderate MDD. This could explain why the results regarding this variable were insignificant. And when it comes to participants' reaction time, studies show that people with MDD have a slower reaction time as opposed to people without MDD. This is contradictory to the results of this experiment since it shows that people without MDD have a slower reaction time. Hence, the author's suggestion to investigate this area further. As for the limitations of this study, one of them is the small sample size used, despite it meeting the required size for each group. Another limitation is the heterogeneous population of participants with MDD. This is because the patients were from different hospitals and some were receiving psychotherapy or medication, or both psychotherapy and medication. So this concludes my presentation for today. I hope it was clear and useful to some extent. Even if you take one point of it and understand it, that would be nice. So thank you all for listening. And if you have any questions, please ask.
And does anybody has any questions?
Yes, can I ask?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Can you go to the slide with participant?
Yeah.
Yes. I just want to to increase my knowledge. I have seen here in Malaysia there is 47 participants, and in Australia there is 41 participants. Do you think this can affect the data analysis because it was not even distributed?
I think they did it in a way in which this difference wouldn't affect the experiment.
Okay.
There was, I think, I don't remember the word for it now, but there is I really don't remember the word for it now. But I think if you, because look at the example for the number of Malaysians compared to compared to the number of Malaysians without MDD also balances out the number of Australians without MDD. So it's not entirely um, an off balance. Does that make sense? I don't know how to explain it better.
Okay.
I think
I don't
they
have
should.
any other question.
Sorry, guys. I think the authors should conduct the chi-squares test to make sure whether there was a significant difference between the number of the subjects in these four groups.
Sure.
And the thing is too, like I don't think I've seen a statistics related paper that has exactly the same amount. If you're comparing two groups, right? I've never seen a paper where you have one group that is exactly equal to another group.
Oh,
Unless maybe you guys have, but
that's okay. So just use the non-parametric test, such as the chi-square test, to measure whether
yeah,
there was yes. So I think it's okay since so 25 without MDD in medicine subjects and 22 with MDD. So seems
yeah,
it's equal.
yeah.
Okay.
That's what I was trying to say. Thank you, Professor.
Mm.
Okay.
And
Thank you.
okay, may I ask one question about the age? Because you can see the participants, the age range from 18 to 60 years old. So it's a
Yeah.
big range. So did the authors make or put the age into the data analysis as a correct variable or confounding factor?
They didn't mention anything about a main effect of age. It was
Okay.
just stated, but I don't think they mentioned anything important about age.
Okay, okay. In my opinion, if you would
Mm,
like to conduct this kind of the study, age is very important because it's really a big gap between 15
yeah.
and 16. So it should put the age factor as a correct factor into our data analysis. But in the future, if you guys have this kind of paradigms or studies, please remember to put it.
I agree with you.
Okay. The next one, go to the stimuli. Could you please go to the
Sorry?
stimuli? Go to the stimuli, the physics, the expressions. Like
The
yes.
stimuli
Uh,
here.
yeah, this one. So all the stimuli are black and white, or black and gray stimuli, no colorful.
Also, that was not mentioned in the study. They just mentioned that they have pictures from this set, but they didn't mention if it was black and white or if it's colored. I
Okay.
just pulled this up as an example to show you how the reactions look like.
Okay, okay, thanks. So normally, in the recent studies, we generally will report whether the stimuli are only white and gray or the colorful. Because of the
Mm,
different color, it will also influence the FE facial expression recognition. So it is the
that's a good
other,
point. Yeah.
yes, okay.
All right. Thank you
Okay,
for your comment.
Okay, great. Does anybody has any questions to Fatima?
No?
No. Okay, next one.
All right. Thank you, Professor. Thank you, everyone, for listening.
Okay, thanks for your presentation and good job.
Thank you.
Next one is Kimendo. It's your turn.
Okay, okay. Can you see my slide?
Yes, very clear.
Yes.
Okay, so sorry. Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Hello, can
please
you
go
hear me?
on.
Okay. Okay, my name is Jotham Kimondo. My name is Jotham Kimondo, and my student ID is this one. Okay, I've chosen this paper titled Effectiveness of Emotion Regulatory Training on Test Anxiety and Processing Efficient of High School Girls Students. Hey, what happened? Sorry. I have to do this way. Okay, so my presentation will cover this 4 session: introduction, material and methodology, finding, and conclusion. So the review from previous study explained that positive and negative modes of excitement is an inseparable part of the human life. So every human has its positive and negative mode of excitement. Okay, so when one of these modes, either positive or negative, dominate or persistence, then there is some changes on the cognitive functions of the brains. So especially when the person is dominant on the negative mode of excitement, then there is a possibility of mental disorders and such as depression and anxiety. But for positive excitement, when it is dominant, then from the previous study, they've said that energy level, also decision making and creativity of the brain. So from the previous findings, the question you have to ask yourself: what was the cause of the negative experience to be dominant and perceive higher? Okay. So negative experience or negative emotions can perceive higher or can be dominant if somebody cannot be able to control this negative emotion excitement. So according to this researcher, student test anxiety was due to lack of coping skills with excitement. Also, emotional regulations has a significant positive relationship with the testing anxiety. So what was the hypothesis of this study? The hypothesis of this study was to determine the effect of emotional regulations training on the test anxiety and process efficiency among the high school girls. Actually, they aims to test the effect of emotion regularity on the anxiety on the negative and positive emotion. So it was done by evaluating an individual cognitive system when dealing with negative events and understanding the relationship between anxiety and cognitive function of the individual. So let's go to the material and method that they've used. So this study covered the population of 5,893 females high school students in Bonab City. And they selected only the sample of 44 students, and they divided the groups of this sample into two groups. The first one was the control groups, and the second one was the experimental group. The control group was 22 and the experimental group was also 22. That's why I asked that question to Fatma. Okay, so material and method also. The size of sample for the following conditions. So they selected this significance level to be 0.05. Actually, on the research of statistics, this significant p-value has to be selected because when you are doing the data analysis of your study, if your data analysis of your study is less than this significance alpha level you have selected, means that study is significant. So in this study, they selected 0.05. The participants of this study were selected through multi-cluster sampling, and Baobab City was divided geographically into 4 regions. So they selected those 44 samples on the north side, south side, east side of this Bonab City. So tools they've used for data analysis was the first one was this is Plegler exercise anxiety inventory. Actually, this is the German words, so it's difficult to pronounce. But this is Plegler exercise anxiety inventory was used to prepare the questionnaire of 20 items. Actually, this questionnaire, the aim was to describe the reaction of the students before exam, during the exam, and after the exam. Remember, the aim is to test the anxiety of the students during exam. So they divided that questionnaire into 2 sessions, worry and the excitement, actually positive and negative. The aim was to measure individual difference in test anxiety. Also, the second tools was the information processing index. Okay, actually, this second tools, the aim was to test a processing efficiency of the students. If you go through the literature review, one of the researchers said that the processing efficiency actually decrease as someone is more excited or more anxiety. So also they selected these tools to test the processing efficiency of the student when they are excited with the exam. So how they designed, the trains with different color wagons enter the station. They made the stations and they selected different trains with different color to pass through the stations, and the subject must remember the color of the wagons as they pass through the stations. Actually, these trains with these colored trends was changed, was having different color. So the subject was asked to remember the color of the wagon as it passed through the station. Why they did that in this study? Did that because the number of correct response of that subject will be equal to the number of the wagon that are correctly answered, and the person score is equal to the percentage of his correct judgment. So the score and the response time of each judgment was recorded for data analysis. The aim of this was to evaluate the efficiency of their processing, as I have said in previous slide. So now remember I said they divided the groups into two, the group for control group and the experimental group. So how they intervene to the experiment, that they can differentiate between the control group and the experimental group. First, both groups completed the pretest. That means both groups attended this information processing index and this one research tools, which is the Sprigga exercise anxiety inventory. That was the pre-test. Both groups, a control group and experimental group, performed that. And the intervention now was done to the experimental group by giving 2 3-hour training session per week. Okay, so remember the title of the study was to test the effectiveness of the emotion regulation. So the experimental group attended these emotion regulations, and later on they performed the post-test, whereas the control group did not receive the training, but the experimental group received the training. So this was the training. This was the training where the experimental group attended. Okay, so as you can see in the title, the first training was understanding the primary and secondary goals, and the second session, a general understanding of the assignment. And the purpose of that training was those subject was trained to be aware of the recognition of emotions, and also in the third sessions, self-assessment. In this self-assessment, the aim was for the subject to recognize his self-emotion experience. The aim also was to recognize his degree of emotions, and also the third one was to identify individual regularity strategies, how the subject can regulate his emotions. Okay, so also skills training was given, and stop thinking training also was given. So after the training, so the post-test was done for both control groups. Now, after the training, now the testing, the post-test was done. Those two tools was done again for both experimental groups and the control group. So after recording the data, the results of the hypothesis was done through this software which called the MANOVA, multivariate analysis of variance, used for statistical data analysis, and this MBOX and Levine test used for data normalization. So this was the findings. This was the findings after the experiment. As you can see, there is a test anxiety and processing efficiency. Remember, they were testing the anxiety and the processing efficiency. In the pre-test, they see that there is a significant difference between the control groups and there is a significant difference in test anxiety and post and processing efficiency before the training and after the training. So to test the hypothesis that emotional regulation training affected test anxiety and the processing efficient maneuver analysis was used. As you can see here in the P level, the P level was decreased and it was 0.001, which means the study was significant. If you compare with the P level, the alpha level, they set it before the experiment. So we can say that from the table it shows that there were a significant difference between the test and control groups at a level of P 0.01. Also to test the hypothesis that the training of emotional regulations affect exam anxiety, ANOVA analysis was used in the MANOVA test. And in this table, you can come to this, where is P level? Okay, the significance level here, you can see is 0.538. So it shows that there is no significant difference in test anxiety in the test group at the level of P, but in the post-test, there is a difference between the obtained significant level, which is 0.02. So in the pre-test, remember, they performed the experiment for both experimental and the control groups before the training. And the significance level was 0.538, which means it was out of the range of the alpha level. But after the training, you can see the post-test, you can see here the significant level of 0.02, which we can say that emotion training regulations has an effect on the processing efficiency of the brain and the test anxiety. Also, to examine the hypothesis that the training of emotional regulation affects processing efficiency, also the same, you can see here, the significance level was decreased, but before the training, the significance level was out of the range. So to conclude, emotion, anxiety, and excitement are among the factors that greatly affect the performance of individuals in situations such as position of the exam. Emotion change create mental disorder that affect performance like lack of concentration and attention, forgetfulness, lengthy content. So interpretations that this individual have emotion excitement affect on performance in their excitement. So this also is a take-home message from this study. If students have high negative rating about excitement and they consider it as a deterrent and destructive, they will experience more anxiety. If an individual can control their anxiety, their excitement, and evaluate them more positively, they will have less anxiety. So this was the limitation of the study. By the way, they selected the limited sample, which is the 42 students. So means a small size of the sample and the low power of generation of course experimental design. So thank you. If you have any question, you can ask.
Okay, thanks, Johan. Does anybody has any questions? Okay, Johan, I have one question. Could you
Yes.
please move to the slides about the training?
Training.
There are several sessions about this training.
Okay, here it is.
Yes. So how long for each session last for the training? So just finished one time or just last several days?
No. They took it for 1 hour. This training was done only for 1 hour. Then they waited for 1 week for 1 week to perform the post-test.
So they can finish the 8 sessions in 1 hour.
Yes, I can show you from the paper. Can I show you from the paper?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think there are a lot of sessions and a lot of activities for the training. How can they finish it in 1 hour?
Do you see this? Do you see my slide? Do you see the do you see the paper?
And now only for the presentation slides.
Still there is a presentation slide?
Yes.
Wait for some time. I'm sorry.
Try sharing your desktop.
Yeah, I want to share.
Reshare.
Yeah, reshare your desktop.
Okay, let me show it. Sorry. Okay. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so here they say here during the 8th session of the experimental group received 2 sessions per week, and each session received 1 hour of thriller training from November.
They do not finish the 8 sessions in 1 hour. So each session receive 1 hour. So in total it should be 8
1
hours.
hour in a week. Yeah, sure.
Oh, I see. Did they do some follow-up after the post measurements?
Can you come again?
Did they finish or did they do some follow-up after the post measurements? So they do the measurements twice before the training and immediately after the training. So what about the follow-up?
Follow-up period, oh?
Maybe after the training
after the training, they waited for 1 week. Then they did the post-test.
Okay, so what about after the post-test?
Yeah, and that was the aim of the study. After the post-test, these are the results I've shown you that after the post-test, they come up with the conclusion that the training, emotion regulation training, has an effect on the processing efficiency of the brain and has also an effect on the testy anxiety. We can summarize that the studies are significant.
I think I'm not clear to you. So how many times of the measurements? So before the training and after a post training. So before and post training. So they collected 2 times for the measurements, right?
Yeah, 2 times.
And so my question is about whether they collected the 3rd time or 3 times for the measurements. The last time is called the follow-up.
Professor, I'm sorry, I didn't get your question. If anybody has understood the question from the professor, please can you help me to elaborate
Does
more?
anybody can do the translation? Does anybody understand my
Yes.
question?
Can you repeat your question again, Professor? Sorry.
So for the training studies, we normally collect 3 times for the data. So the first time is pre the training. The second one is post the training. And then the 3rd time is follow up.
Did they do,
Ah,
because you
okay.
said there was one training and then another, like a post training. Did they do a
Yes,
follow-up?
yes.
No, 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 no. No,
Mm.
no, no, they didn't do the follow-up. Now I get it. They did only the pre-test and the post-test, only that.
Yes, that's my question.
Yeah. Yeah, they
Okay,
did
okay,
only the pre-test and the post-test and they come up with the conclusion, yeah.
okay, I know, I see. Does anybody has questions?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, let's have 4 minutes break, and the next one is Ahmad.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. And you did good job, and thanks. Hello guys, let's go on. So it's your turn, Ahmed.
Hello, Professor. Do you hear me?
Yes, very clear.
Yeah, I don't know what's the problem with my PC. I couldn't use the microphone, so I use my phone and my laptop.
Okay.
So, yeah, I was. This is my slide. You say my slide too, right?
Yes.
Okay, so let's begin. My name is Wahib Al Kamat. I'm from Yemen. I'm PhD student of the School of Life Science, biomedical engineer. My supervisor is Pedro. So this is my name and my ID. So I choose this paper to represent today. Let me just move this thing from here. Okay, we got. Okay, so I chose this change in the brain function during the negative emotion processing in the long-term cause of the depression. So this is my content. My content is as a former. So let's move this. Okay. So first of all, I will start with the introduction. So this study of the depression, depressive the order disorder, one of the most common modern mental disease in the world, and is associated with the mood congruent base in the emotion processing. So the prospective examination of the illness depend alternation or negative emotion processing was the purpose of the counter investigation. So the prospective neural imaging study made associated and understand how illness progression impact the brain activity during the emotion progress, and identify the individual at high risk of the relapse who could benefit from increased deep relapse. And uh, so the aim of this study, it's mentioned as here, use the prospective neutral approach, explore the long-term alternation in the brain, also to later control for the impact your drug and psychotherapy. So on the brain function. So to discover the baseline variation in the brain activity occurs in the depression individual with the distinct disease progression. So so I will move to the fMRI method. The method is use the fMRI data gathered and processing as following by the knowledge as a formal. We know how to we gather the fMRI data. So for the formation of the fMRI paradigm data gathered and progressing using the 3D center or the controlled by the 2T functions data signal short and sequence. So the fMRI paradigm was modified phase machine task with the full emotional phase, processing blocks and the five sensor motors control blocks. So studies show the range and the dread. Genetics from the where the control jobs and the general linear model as standard how dynamic response functions to describe phase and shape on seat and duration. So the sex of the requirement the paradigms or parameters. So the phase is greater than the shapes for each participant, and the measurement which was employed in this second level. Read that the the analysis. So each subject, time, and point had effect interactive associated for the quality control. So the analysis, the statistical analysis is used to this method. The static parameter mapping evaluate the second level. So the fMRI data. So all the second level also research the contrasted phase greater than the shape, and the first of all the second level analysis were done in the region of the interest for the region of the ROI. So using the SPM and TFC, the toolbox, mixed box was analyzed with the same values correlation for the brain analysis. So we use these parameters, three multi-two ANOVA. So of the second levels analysis will hold the brain. So then analysis the supplementary of the method describe the additional analysis. So the first, the patient that does and psychotherapy effect on the brain functions and relates the predictions based on the baseline brain function data compare, which is clinical data. So the effect of the regime starts of the following of the brain activity. So during the method part, the participants also and the others information about this I will mention here. So participants receive the fMRI during the process of the negative emotional phase at the baseline and following up. So compared the clinical rates completed the structure clinical individual for the DSM and V element. So the progression of this disease was evaluated the baseline and during the following up. So the nature and frequency of the psychotherapy temperament before the baseline and the the medications load index was collected for the each time point measure of the psychotherapeuticology. So at the baseline and follow up. So the final samples consist of the 72 depression patients and 42 health controls. So the characteristic of the participants are summarized in the table. We will show it later. The measurement of the table. The patient groups was also featured individual into subsequence, and whole wear in the fall remain. So as a parameter that addition the depressive employed after the baseline 25 and patients who suffer from the organized depression also. So here, as we said, the description of the collection, the data for the MRI to the sigma and the clinical characteristic of the symbols. As we can see here is the value at 10 seconds, and these the age also include and the HRDC baseline and others. So I also patients with the depressions, and these the value they go for the results, and patient with the depression and no relapse by the main of the standard diffusion. So here also the health control. As we see here. So last we move to the next one is the result. The result part divided to the regression or the region of the brain. So here we have the ROI analysis. The time depends on the relapse, the post-host, the t-test for the change in the brain function. For the baseline to follow up with the groups revealed to the relaxing by the time interaction result for the significant amygdala and insula activity increase with that no relapse groups, whereas with relapse group insula. And here we can see the health control change little over time. So also the hippocampus for the analysis of ROI showed no release by the time interaction or effect, and the value it's p-value equal to 0.055. So that's all the ROI result have the p-value that greater than 0.126. So the baseline for the active or the impact between the groups for all of the three analysis for ROI post the t-test individual, that no groups had lower left amygdala, ventral, and hippocampus and insula active than the health control. So the full depression in patients, the group that show the health control, no change in the brain function, and in any of the three region. So the second one, the whole brain analysis. Wow, you guys the whole of the brain imaging. So the significant relapse by the time. So interaction emerged that different by the activity increase in no age groups and activity. So last we was here. Okay, so as we can see also here at the low brain level time had no parameters impact the p equal to 0.48. So as we say that the figure the amygdala and insula for the analysis. So by the value, the Y value, as you can see here, if the fMRI controls 6 values analysis, and the baseline, as we can here. Cholesterol, the domain, the figure show the baseline and following amygdala response for the health control, the MDD patient with the replace and no replace and health control. So extraction that first aging value of the significant and left the cholesterol. So the figure to also show here whole the brain analysis along replace and that interaction. Cholesterol, the significant of the p value is less than this 0.5. So the fMRI control values were collected by the extracting the first aging value. So of the most significant cholesterol from the whole brain analysis. So the analysis, production, clinical, and baseline brain function data together gathering protected replace better than either alone. Baseline the left. So the brain activity after remission. The patient groups was divided into subsequent two groups by the following: 40 patients in the computer regression and the current depression. So detail of the impact emissions statistic of that active. So from the figure 3, we can see here the result by graph showing that typically insula and response phase greater than the forms. And the following up for the regions subgroups, the value 95% are error. So the fMRI contrast the volume were collected by the extracting the first agent value. So the main impact of the subgroups is by this value by the x equal to 40 and y. So we go to the last part, is the discussion part. This study was conducted by 2 years fellow research assessing the brain activity, negative emotion processing in the long-term depression. Patient with the weird depression, of course, reveal distinct brain activity during the negative emotion processing in the amygdala, insula, and temporal and prefrontal cortex. The medication does and the psychotherapy did not change any amygdala or insula outcomes in the most individuals. So the change in the amygdala and insula activity. So in this paper, detected that increase the activity in the insula in the reactions to the negative. So the individual in the region found lower active. So the change in the frontal temporal activity. So let me move this. So study also show the brain result of the fourth reveal a change with the temporal pole or and in the temporal pole is involved in the force recognition and plays the key roles in the integration of the value input. So the last one is the effect of the medications. Does psychotherapy on the change in the brain activity? Today they change the brain activity. So the cross of the section is different in the brain activity and the strength and the limitations and the long-term memory. So thank you for listening attention.
Okay, does anybody has questions? Okay, thanks, Ahmad. And we have the other presentation due to the candidate has quarantined in the hotel. So he just sent me the video, the presentation video. So let's watch together.
Okay, Professor, thank you.
Okay, and can you hear the voice of the video?
No?
Okay, let's do it.
My name is Sambhu Pandit.
What about now?
Yes, now we can hear.
Okay.
I am a student in UESTC, beginning this year in Masters in Biomedical Engineering at School of Life Science and Technology. This is my presentation for the subject Cognitive Neuroscience. Uh, the topic of this presentation is a paper named uh, an exploratory study on cross-cultural differences in facial emotion recognition between adults from Malaysia uh, and Australia by Sindhu Nair Mohan, Firdaus Mukhtar, and Laura Jobson. Let me begin my presentation by showing the contents of this presentation. These are our contents. Let me go into the introduction part straight away. We know that this uh, culture and depression influence the way in which human process emotions, but these two subjects are rarely studied together. This has been solved by this paper, I must say. So the aim of this paper is to investigate uh, the difference in facial emotion recognition among Malays and Australians with European heritage, with and without depression. Uh, this emotion is the researchers are very interested in studying these emotions because mainly of two reasons. One is that humans the basic instinct of survival depends on it, and other one is that to cope with basic life tasks we need to study this topic. Um, and I must add that this major depression disorder, which I would now term as MDD, this impairs regulation and processing of emotions. And I will also like to add that cultural influence in facial recognition is found across different cultures. Um, and emotion also tells other how we feel, build, sustain in relationships by affecting how others people may interact with us and encourage and enable social interactions. Uh, and something I like to add before method is that the ability to identify and understand emotions from facial expression is called facial emotion recognition. I added this point because this will uh, be uh, discussed later in the slide many times. So now let's go to the methods. The methods that was used in conducting this uh, study is shown here. A total of 88 participants were involved. Participants were aged between 18 to 60 years old. The number of Malaysian uh, participants were 47, and the participants with MDD MDD were 22 and without MDD were 25 in case of Malaysians. In case of Australians, total number of participants were 41, with MDD were 19, without MDD were 22. Uh, and some of the participants who try to uh, be participant in this specific study were excluded because of their history of substance abuse and illiteracy, because we need some literacy in this study to to complete this study. and with mixed parentage were also excluded, because this was the study which had a background to the people with Asian background as well as the European background, so they were excluded. And how this recruitment was done is presented in this slide. The Australian participants with MDD uh, were mm, were recruited from general community and clinics in Melbourne, and without MDD were recruited by posting ads on social medias and Monash University, Melbourne campus. And in case of Malaysians, the participants with MDD were from Hospital Kazang, Hospital Kuala Lumpur, and Psychiatric Clinic, University Putra, Malaysia, as well. Without MDD were recruited by advertisement on University Putra Malaysia's staffs and other social media platforms. The participants were voluntary, and they were consented on written form as well for all the the activities done under this study. The sample size of this study was done by G power, which was used for for calculating the sample size. Let me now go to the measures used in this study. Two softwares were used for calculating the depression, big depression inventory, which was used for Australians, and big depression inventory for Malay, BDI Malay, were used. And BDI is actually a self-report tool to access the severity of depression. And BDI has internal consistency reliability of coefficient ranging from 0.76 to 0.92, and the Malay version of the same has internal consistency reliability coefficient ranging from 0.711 to 0.91. And yeah, let me go to the next point, stimuli. Uh, Face emotion recognition was developed and presented using E-Prime software, which is a psychological software tool. And participants were actually shown with two sets of picture, Australian and Asian randomly. Pictures depicting 7 different emotions were shown, which are neutral, happy, sad, anger, fear, disgust, and shame. Subject were to identify the emotion correctly. Uh, and prior to this experiment, the participants were trained uh, for the familiarization of the tasks prior to the study, so that there were no mistakes. And the procedure, let me explain the procedure. Uh, the ethical approval which is required for human trial was taken in advance from the authorities in both countries. Data collection on both countries between January 16 and January 18 were done. So the data was collected in this time. And now this is the continued procedure part. Data in Malaysia was collected at a behavioral science lab UPM. In the same way, in Australia was also collected in behavioral lab MUA. I screen was what it was done is that the experiment, a screen was placed 50 cm away from the participants, uh, and for MDD diagnosis, a participant were screened using structural clinical interview. Written consents for both VDI and FER tasks. There are two tasks involved in this study. So these written consents were taken for these both tasks. Uh, let me explain the analysis plan. Data was analyzed using the software statistical package for the social sciences, which is also called SPSS, which is very popular in statistical analysis. SPSS 25 was used exactly. Um, Participants with less than 80% data were excluded. This means that participants who could not provide the all the data, uh, let us say more than 80%, were excluded. So, and this multivariant analysis of variances, which is also called MANOVA, MANOVAs, ANOVA actually, the pillar trace was used. ANOVAs were conducted with FER accuracy rate. 2 by 2 MANOVA used to investigate the recognition of specific emotion types. And mm, participants' education level and gender, age did not appear to have significant accuracy rates and reaction time for the after the analysis found. Actually, let me now go to the results part. What were the results of this study? Malaysian participants, you know, who were approved were aged between 19 and 53 years old. 21.3% were male and 78.7% were female. In the Australian case, uh, the yeah, the age gap is, the age was between 18 to 57 years old, and 29.3% male and 68.3% were female. The table here shows the demographic data of the participants, uh, and it shows the participant with MDD and without MDD, uh, and the analysis is shown here. The mean BDI score for the Malaysian participants without MDD was 2.72, which is actually seen here, and uh, with MDD was 32.64. 32.64. And now let me explain this part. Mean BDI score for Australian participants without MDD was 4.68, and with MDD was 2.27. And one of the main results were that Malaysian participants with MDD had greater depression symptoms than Malaysian participants without MDD. Uh, in case of Australians with MDD scored more on BDI than without MDD. The second, this table shows that the means, standard deviation, and multivariant ANOVA statistics for Malaysian and Australian participants with and without MDD, as you can see here. Uh, This has been differentiated in terms of emotions as well. In this emotions, you can see neutral, angry, joy, sad, and these 7 types of emotions. It was dissected in 7 types of emotions. The data. Let me explain the performance of on FER. No significant evidence on overall accuracy of recognition with or without MDD. Uh, or with cultural difference were shown. Malaysian had greater accuracy in recognizing emotion actually, uh, and response time in on FER. The time that the Malays took were actually shorter. Uh, in case of not having MDD, the Malays without MDD had shorter response time actually. So the Australians with MDD had shorter response with reference to the participants from Malaysia. So it is one of the major findings of this study. Now let us discuss our results. The results of this paper. Mm, no significant difference on the accuracy and performance on the overall FER tasks were seen for the Malaysians and Australians. Uh, the Australians with MDD actually provided faster response than without MDD, and Malays were more accurate, recognizing one of the emotion that is fear. The participants with MDD had saw slower reaction than without the MDD. Uh, Actually identifying the negative stimuli, that is fear. Mm, uh, Now let us go to the limitation part of this study. One of the major limitations was that it has a pretty uh, small sample size, only 88 participants were sampled, so it is a pretty small size for this kind of experiments. Heterogeneous population of the participants, population with different background and different age groups were the participants of this study. Uh, Participants with similar background place, the place of this study was actually done in two uh, place only, the Melbourne for the Australians, and for the Malaysian part, uh, it was done in Kuala Lumpur actually. So the similar place background can give similar kind of emotion due to the similar surroundings. This is one of the limitation, and this generally it can be generalized to the adults from urban areas, since both of these areas are urban areas, and not the higher group age group like above 60 or lower age group below 18 were involved in this involved in this study. Sorry. Now let me conclude with some of the future directions of this study. You know, uh, the this uh, this study could further now be extended to include advanced devices like eye tracking devices to examine the differences in the to examine the if there were any differences in the way different culture identify expression on faces or movement that could be done. And other thing that could be done to extend this study in future is that it could be used to investigate the influence of age and gender on the FER. And the last thing that could be done is that it can the future study can include the comparing of healthy adults and with those who have psychological disorders, and these three can be done in the future uh, to, to make this this kind of study to take it to another level. And this concludes my presentation for today. Thank you all for your time.
Okay, guys. So this is our last time for the sessions for the course. So shall you take the video and then we take a group photo together?
Can you say that again, Professor? I didn't hear you.
No, I can't see you. Oh, we will take a group photo together. Kemendo and Fatima.
Oh, my camera doesn't work.
Oh, sorry. It's a pity. What? Yes. Okay. Wait for a moment. Okay. One, two. Okay. 1, 2, 3, go. Smile. Okay. Thanks, guys, and have a nice how to say, and hope you will get a good performance for the final examination. And due to one of the students will take the flight tonight, so I will assign the file of our final examination to you tomorrow at 2:40, the same time with our course.
Hello.
Hello?
So how do we do it's an exam?
I will assign the
You
file.
send us in
Yes, I
the
will
group?
share in the Facebook group. And then you guys have
Okay.
1 day to finish it and hand back it.
Okay, okay.
Okay. So thanks. And for the presentation, you all did a good job. Okay, today's course is over.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Okay, Zajan.
Thank you, Professor.